Zero and Rose. Interesting. Because I've seen Rose symbolism in prior episodes. And now it's made it to the title of the episode. Oh, look at that. Oh, they're at it. Oh my god, look at the sense of scale. Ooh, look at this. In the palms. Wow.
王は極限まで時が圧縮され、意識のみがかろうじて捉えるネテロの残像を追いながら、ある感情に支配されていた。敵への惜しみなき称賛。
Wow. That's art. That is art. Tapestry painting, folklore. Ooh, xenomorph. Ah, he clocked it.
命取りに近いはずの無駄な振る舞いが世に勝る武器として成立している。
Yeah, he's a bit different than the rest.
何故奴がこれを体得するに至ったか考察することに意味はない。到底合理的な道筋ではたどり着けない場所だからだ。おそらく狂気にすら近い感情に身を委ねたのだ。
He's close? Pretty close?
あるいは10年か。それに没頭したのだ。
Great transition. Look at that. Already, this is special. You could just tell. The durability is insane. Great animation. Look at that. But again, this is someone quite special. Ooh. Whoa. That's the thing, right? The durability. He can just keep going. Keep attacking. Oh, love the art style switch ups. Of course. Look at this, Komugi. Still assisting him. Whoa, look at this. Don't die. Be the perfect sparring partner. The margin for error is just minuscule. Zero Hand. The title of the episode, Zero and Rose. Look at this again. Whoa. Okay. Finally. beautiful.
止血しろ。そして世の名を言え。
My God. Something tells me he's not ready to give up just yet. Oh, his reaction there. Oh. Oh my God. Netero, the Oni. The red-faced demon, Togashi.
小麦との対局が余地のごとき先見を可能にした。貴様が無意識に嫌う型、その存在が本来無限であるはずの選択にしるべを示
So
す。
see. Oh,
次は左腕をもらう。
he'll take it. He'll take it. Not even a minute, eh? Ah.
その覚悟で放ったネテロの百式は線を越える拳のやり取りとなって
That's quite the sample size.
無数の火花を生んだ。
Oh.
そしてその瞬間は訪れた。
Oh no.
身を盾にネテロの拳を受け続けることで王は
And obtain a sample size. My God, look at this.
たどり着いた。
Oh. Oh. The form. Interesting.
さあ述べよ。世の名を。
It's making me think of, you know, back in the early days, him against Gon and Killua.
ありの腕がなけりゃ祈れねえとでも。祈りとは
Oh my God.
心の所作。
Behind him.
心が正しく形をなせば思いとなり、思いこそが実を結ぶのだ。
百式観音
Zero hand, okay.
敵背後から現れし観音が有無を言わさぬ慈愛の
Indiscriminate love.
対象を優しく包み込み
Look at that. It's like he's back in the womb.
ネテロの渾身の全オーラを目もくらむ光星のごとき
Holy shit.
打ち放つ
Okay, this has to do damage, man.
無慈悲の方向である。
It has to do some damage. I mean, more than some damage. Oh God, yeah. Oh. That depleted essentially most of his life force. It used up most of it, right? I mean, the narrator said as much. That's it, isn't it? Oh my God. He's not even looking human anymore, right? He's got this demonic look about him. I saw it earlier. I mean, he was literally... Oh my God. Okay, I mean, there's some scratches, but I was expecting a bit more than that, man.
素晴らしい一撃であった。
ゼロでさえも。
Wow, look at his eyes.
世はありの王として生を受け、生命の頂点に立つことを許された。貴様の
Oh
命じ
God.
特区を設け、人類の永住を許可しよう。貴様の孤独な戦いは無駄ではなかったのだ。
俺は一人じゃねえ。
Look at that, the red-faced demon once again. An Oni. Oh my God.
舐めるなよ。 私の名だ。
And the name.
ネ
Whoa.
テロが王の名を告げた時、王はその響きに浸る間もなく白旗を上げたはずの老人を見ていた。
なんだこいつは。
He's not done just yet, is he?
ありのメルエル、お前さんは何にも分かっちゃいねえよ。
Oh, God.
人間の底すらない進化を。
それは王が初めて感じる恐怖だっ
I
た。
have chills right now, man.
すべてを絞り尽くし死を待つのみであるはずの老人の言葉が決して虚栄の類では
Oh, he doesn't even look human anymore. Look at this.
その顔に現れていた。
あなたの心臓が鼓動を止めれば、これは作動。
Contingencies.
地獄があるならまた会おうぜ。
貴様はそう貴様は
Whoa.
積んでいたのだ初めから。
Holy shit, it is a nuke.
その爆弾は低予算で小型の上、
Ooh, the
驚くほどの
rose.
殺傷能力を誇り、短期間での大量生産が可能なことと爆炎の得意な姿からミニチュアローズ、貧者のバラと呼ばれ独裁小国家に好まれた。
Holy shit. I mean, that's incredible. The things I just saw in this episode, but I'm just so deflated at the moment. Okay, episode 126. I mean, the highest of highs. The highest of highs, but also the lowest of lows. As I said there at the end, I feel really quite drained, right? Because ultimately it is such a gut punch, right? Such a kick in the teeth, a jarring reality check, a reminder of the destructive force humans are capable of, something that possibly the late King Meruem could not even fathom, right? And ultimately, I did get my answer to one of my talking points from episode 122. Can a man-made nuke actually even do anything to King Meruem? Can it actually inflict realistic damage to the King Meruem? And ultimately, not only is it a striking revelation that the Nen practitioners, even the best of the best, pale in comparison to the destructive force of a nuke, it's not even a full-sized nuke. I mean, at most, it's like a mini nuke. Right, but even then, even so, the destructive force is staggering. It really is quite staggering. You know, it just blew me away. Just the revelation of that. Getting quite a raw and in my face confirmation that indeed a man-made nuke, a crude, indiscriminate weapon of mass destruction, is more than capable of taking out these beings that I refer to as godlike beings, titans that walk the earth, the world of this anime. They pale in comparison to this. I mean, at the end of the day, it's just this low budget, easily produced, compact bomb, right? And that was more than enough to do the job, right? Of course, there's room for speculation, but yeah, it's as simple as that. You know, it's one of the most definitive confirmations, one of the most definitive answers I've ever received in a story, right? And listen, you cannot fault me as a first-time audience member to look at it as something really quite staggering, because, up until this point, I was just under the assumption, based on everything I've received up until this point, about the power system, the power scaling, and the destructive forces that are available from the human side in this anime. To me, up until this point, I thought it was actually really quite clear that okay, Nen is on just a higher level, right? And that was one of the main reasons I even questioned in episode 122's talking points, if a man-made weapon, a weapon of mass destruction in this case, is going to be enough, right? Ultimately, yes. And this revelation about this bomb, the low-budget compact miniature rose or poor man's rose, the revelation is such a gut punch because ultimately, the Chimera ants and the Chimera ant king wasn't really going to be a threat. It just recontextualizes so much of this arc. If it wasn't going to be the chairman, they would have been taken care of, right? And it's really, the only way I can really describe it, it's like a kick in the teeth. It really is, That's why I felt so deflated by the anime. Even though I experienced one of the most insane 21-minute episodes I've ever seen of anything ever. And of course, the flow of that is really quite deliberate to take us through that, right? That odyssey of sorts, just in the span of these 20 minutes, 21, 22 minutes or so, right? And the amount of narrative that's actually fit into these 22 minutes is incredible, right? So economical. But the thing that's so impressive about this is that the fight itself, of course, it plays a part, right? The actual physical encounter and the most incredible sights and sounds that I get to experience. But then, within that is built in an incredible narrative flow, right? The psychology of it. And, throughout the 22 minutes, the ebb and flow of this fight, again, the narrative that's displayed here or showcased here, delivered, it's something really quite special. I mean, let's kind of put it up front. It's an all-timer. It goes into the Hall of Greats immediately, right? It's a spectacle, complete spectacle, a showpiece for the anime industry. And I'm sure there's a who's who in that staff list, right? Masters of their craft, some of the best brought in together to execute one of the greatest 22-minute episodes I've seen of anything, right? Certainly of Hunter x Hunter. The whole episode, again, the 22-minute episode, it feels like a labor of love, a dedication to the art, a celebration of the art. I think about 10 episodes ago, exactly 10 episodes ago, episode 116, I got something that really kind of is on the same level, right? Everything I said there in the beginning of that episode, right? The impact of some, works of art, it applies to this. Everything I said there applies to this, right? It's just a bit of a different approach, right? But again, even if it is a fight episode, and as far as fights go, it's the grandest of them all, right? A titanic clash. But the narrative flow is just as impressive as episode 116. You look at the screenplay, the writing of this episode is incredible. That GIF on Twitter. It's the person who's writing on just like writing on paper, and the hand and the pen is on fire. You think of that GIF, right? The screenplay, the dialogue here, just so poignant, so impactful. Nothing seems wasted. Everything that you hear in this episode, everything that you see in this episode has a function. It means something. Some of the lines of dialogue here are all-timers. Simply some of the most poignant and memorable lines of dialogue from both ends, essentially. But for the most part, I think the chairman, the outgoing great, the legend, the iconic chairman Netero, right? And as I am speaking, one of the things that's really at the forefront is the immediate aftermath, be it the narrative aftermath and also the literal fallout, the literal aftermath of this strike. It's a nuclear strike at the end of the day, right? Even if maybe it is a mini nuke, again, compact enough to be fitted into the chairman's rib cage, right? His heart, attached to his heart, the functionality of his heart. And that moment as you get the transition to the doctors who outfitted the chairman with this poor man's rose, the miniature rose. To me, it really felt like a moment out of Death Note, right? And again, the score is by the same composer, right? And again, before I forget, the score is immense. It's immense in this episode. And, of course, even the returning music, I think most of it is returning music. The way it's utilized, the way it's incorporated, it's just incredible directing choices and editing choices. It's just beautiful stuff. It's legitimately a perfect episode, 10 out of 10, exceptional stuff. But yeah, ultimately, it's really quite the mammoth episode. And right now, I'm just kind of going with the flow, in terms of the things that are coming to mind. And there's so much that's just kind of swimming in there. But yeah, let me kind of focus a bit more on just the execution of the episode itself. It's beautifully directed. The art style changes, just the fidelity of it all, right? The key animation, the impact frames, the quality of the drawings. My God, it's just packed with some of the most stunning, thought-provoking, jaw-dropping imagery, iconic, unforgettable, haunting, and I mean legitimately haunting imagery that I'm always going to associate with Hunter x Hunter, specifically of the chairman, right? One of the things that's something I could actually even describe as a bit of a privilege, as an audience member, is to sit back and see just the trajectory of the chairman throughout this episode, right? It's a celebration, the life and times of Chairman Netero. That's how I kind of looked at it. But again, as I speak of the immediate aftermath and maybe even the long-term aftermath, a lot of things come into mind, right? The connotations of this, the connotations of, using this specific force to handle this, right? I'm thinking of the chairman's legacy, his lasting legacy, especially because, they already introduced the idea of this vice chairman who's always kind of been against the chairman, right? Not a fan of the chairman, not at all, right? He's made things quite difficult. They made that really quite clear. I think it's back in episode, maybe, a little bit after episode 92. So, it'll be interesting to see the fallout of that aspect of it. That was the chairman of the Hunter Association. The chairman is now gone. That position is vacant at this point. So, that is going to come into play at some point. Now, again, given that I'm getting really close to the end of the anime, 126 out of 148, I don't know if that's something I'll be experiencing anytime soon. It does feel like that might be something in the manga. And, at this point, I'm even more excited to go into the manga right after this. But yeah, that position is up for the taking. And is it as simple as just the vice chairman taking over? Or is there another process? Seeing or, given everything I've kind of understood of Togashi up until this point, 126 episodes in, I'm sure it's a bit more, captivating and gripping than that. Than, this vice chairman rather, just taking the position, right? And, in terms of the legacy, is it about to be a bit of a hit job, right? He wasn't a fan of, and not just him, he's got his own backers, right? They mentioned that. He's got a lot of people in his back pocket. So, is it about to be a case of, okay, the chairman's legacy is about to be up in the air, right? Chairman's got his own backers as well, but, so, there could be an interesting dynamic here. Maybe on one end, it's about to be this case of, the chairman's legacy was copiously mythologized. It wasn't all that, right? Especially given, how he goes out. Right, that is going to be used against his legacy as well. And listen, the chairman knows the connotations of ultimately having to go that route, right? Listen, it's so clear that it absolutely killed him to have to do that, right? This final resort. It killed him. And the thing is, of course, he knew there's a good chance that might be required. But, the thing is, if you look at his reaction to the zero hand and the zero hand not being enough, hell, that it scratched Meruem at most. But that was it, right? That was it. But I think, that right there is also a bit of a component of this that you can kind of incorporate into speculation about Meruem and, the aftermath for Meruem specifically in terms of surviving that, right? Is he gone for good? One thing for sure is that the chairman is gone for good, right? Meruem got hit at point blank, but it's even closer than that for the chairman. It's from within the chairman, right? He's dead. And of course, there's no room for speculation. I think it's just disrespectful to even kind of go down that route because, they made it really quite clear. Togashi made it clear this is the final there's a really specific term they used, the final act of my life, right? So, as an audience member, I'm going to respect it as that, right? Because anything that even resembles any chances of him surviving that, it's just, no, that's just terrible. At that point, it's just terrible writing. And, I'm not even going to entertain that because Takashi's not going to do that. It's just not happening, right? Everything that happened by the end of this episode dictates that, okay, those are his final moments. And it's incredibly poignant, as heartbreaking as it is, that he had to take that route, right? Because Zero Hand isn't enough. And, there's that one shot of him just depleted completely of his aura, of his essence, life essence, right? He's just an empty husk at that point, perhaps looking his actual age at that point, his real age, right? And you see the light is gone from his eyes. He looks animalistic, demonic, again, like a husk. And this is one of those incredibly detailed shots of him. You see the wrinkles, you see the detail in the eyes and the cheekbones and the forehead, right? The eye bags, right? The under eye area of his face as he looks down, right? And then at that point, you could just read so much into that one frame. He is just, he's just crushed that he has to go out like this, that this is the route that he's going to have to take. Of course, if it's up to him, it's all about, using his life's dedication, the work he's put in, the time he's put in, the effort that he's put in as a martial artist to go out, in that manner, to, take care of this conflict in that manner. But it wasn't enough. I mean, it really, truly wasn't enough. I mean, Zero Hand wasn't enough. You saw me as an audience member. I thought, okay, surely, using his entire aura, his life essence into this one strike, into this one attack, this beam of light, right? Indiscriminate love, but with murderous intent. I thought, okay, surely this is going to mess Meruem up a bit. But no. And it's one of those really incredibly effective moments that puts you right in the shoes of the character, right? I felt that I was in the shoes of the chairman at that point, right? As that incredible Chimera Ant theme kicks in once again. And this is the point I was making earlier about the really effective use of music here, right? The directing choices and editing choices. You see him come into focus as he walks out of that smoke, right? Yes, he's a little bit marked up, but for the most part, he's there, right? Unharmed. It's so demoralizing. It's just so, I mean, you saw me. I just kind of fell back into my chair, just dejected. I mean, listen, I knew Meruem's not going to die, but I was expecting, a bit more, right? And then you see, I'm essentially in the same headspace as the chairman at that point. And this is the thing I mean about incredible directing, right? And again, the visual element of it really playing into that as well. I mean, the visual element of this is incredible, especially the journey, the mini journey that it takes us on. I mean, in a sense, as an audience member, I feel so proud, right? I feel so proud of this character, the chairman, Netero. And I feel happy in a sense as well that he got everything that he always wanted. This is, he's not out here struggling. Yes, he's in pain after a certain point, but, he's not out here trying to escape this. He is just embracing it because this is the one thing that he's never had the chance of, right? Experiencing, because just given the nature, I touched up on this in the last episode's discussion, once in a lifetime. And even then, it's once in a billion type chance that this type of challenge can present itself, right? For decades and maybe, nearly a century, he had to just kind of accept that, okay, he's not going to get that challenge, right? And he's going to have to fade into the background. And once he got that challenge, he embraced it to the fullest, right till the end, gave it everything, he essentially gave his life essence to, do something. I mean, at the end of the day, you cannot accuse the chairman of holding back or not giving it everything. He gave it everything. And I feel so incredibly proud of this, right? And one of the things that is on my mind at the moment is this is an iconic moment, a legendary moment. It's an historic moment for the history of this anime, the world of this anime rather. As of this point, no one's going to know. No one's going to know his final moments, how the chairman behaved and acted in his final moments. And that's why, I kind of immediately thought of this vice chairman fellow and, this idea, this notion of him possibly kind of, setting up his legacy as some kind of copiously mythologized tale, right? But, there is one glimmer of hope in terms of maybe someone actually sharing the chairman's final moments. And it's a tiny glimmer. It is. But the setup is there, right? There is enough there that you can speculate that, okay, is Meruem actually dead? Completely gone, right? Like I said, one thing is for sure, the chairman is dead. He's gone, right? His life's final act. And it's quite a specific and deliberate choice that he ultimately had to make at that point. You see, at first he's really quite dejected, really quite defeated. And then once he embraces it, and he's like, all right, let's do it. Let's go all in. Let me show him the destructive capabilities of humanity. And, in his final moments, he decides to tell him, do not underestimate the human race. I am not alone, right? And listen, I don't think it's meant to be something prideful either, right? I think that's pretty clear. There's two sides to that coin, of course, right? And I'll kind of go back to some of my initial speculation from really early on in the Chimera Ant arc. I mean, even in maybe the first 2 episodes, I think. I think I brought up human exceptionalism, right? Yeah, I'll go back to that in a bit. And again, some other speculation leading up to this. But yeah, do not underestimate the depths of depravity, right? To inflict pain, to create destructive force. And not only make that destructive force, but make it cheap, make it really cheap to acquire and to produce, right? This is just like a cheap version of it. And there's even that line of dialogue that's really popular with dictatorships, small dictatorships at that, right? My God, it's really quite staggering, right? The reality check of all of this. They're never an issue. They were never going to be an issue, including the Chimera Ant King, right? Ultimately, if push came to shove, they would have taken care of them. I mean, ultimately, you've got biological and physical evolution on one side through the Chimera Ant King, right? The final boss, the final being, the ultimate being. And then on the other side, you've got technological infinite potential, right? There is a limit. As incredible as King Meruem is, right? The pinnacle of that, of that line, essentially, he is the final product, the final being, the final boss. But infinite potential is infinite potential. And going back to my point about human exceptionalism, back from episode 77, 78, I believe, close to that, in the beginning stages. And here I get to see it on display and then some, don't I? The indomitable human spirit, the potential for greatness, human ingenuity. And I remember at that point, speaking of pros and cons of having human build, or just having human genes or DNA in your buildup and your traits as the Chimera ants acquire a taste, or the queen acquires a taste for humans, right? Humans are cunning, ruthless, tribalistic, selfish, capable of the most despicable things imaginable to protect themselves, right? There's hatred, there's division, right? There's the capacity to execute the most destructive and despicable acts, unspeakable atrocities through human ingenuity. So, ultimately, King Meruem, he had no idea, right? You see, even as he's kind of almost lecturing the chairman, as he kind of sits there defeated, looking really quite defeated after Zero Hand's execution, at that point, I sat there just kind of, shaking my head. I'm like, okay, this is, he's beginning to sound really arrogant, right? He's always had that about him, of course, but him lecturing the chairman at that point and, being so matter of fact about it, right? That he understands everything about the human race, right? He did not understand anything. Yes, some of the basics, some of the, things that have been mixed in with the Chimera ant DNA and the build of the Chimera ants and, the shortcomings of it, or because of it, creating divide and all of that. He couldn't even fathom. Right? He couldn't even comprehend the things humans are capable of, right? The thing, one of the biggest mistakes Meruem made here is he looked at this as a competition, a competitive thing in a bubble, right? And he looked at it simply as, okay, the stakes are set, right? He understood the stakes, rather. Okay, I have to make this man quite an impressive man at that. And, I think that's clear as well that he does have a newfound respect for for the chairman by the end of it. But, he just looked at it in a bubble. I'll make him admit defeat, right? And ultimately, as a warrior, the chairman does admit defeat. He does give up the name. But, that's followed up by something else as well. Quite a lesson. Now, again, it remains to be seen if if Meruem's going to make it through this, right, and live to tell the tale, right, and live to maybe tell the story of the chairman in his final moments at least. And the crazy thing about all of this is that depleted state, right, or the chairman in that depleted state, in his final state, essentially before death, before accepting death, before truly embracing the role of Oni. I mean, how about that? I mean, Tagashi he was on a mad one, man, really. He's, like I said, that gif, the hand on fire, the pen on fire. I mean, just this idea of having, throughout the episode, maybe through the midpoint, after he loses his leg, you truly see that depiction of an Oni, right? Red-faced demon out of Japanese folklore, right? And then by the end of it, he embraces that, right? It's his final moment, and he embraces that. And at that point, that is the chairman at his scariest, at his most terrifying. And that's not just me. You see that fear for the first time in King Meruem as well. And this is not some person that's just, exuding some terrifying aura. There is no aura. There's nothing. Everything's gone. It's been depleted. This is just a really depleted husk of a man, yet he is the scariest thing possible at that point in time. So much so that it's the first time King Meruem feels fear. And that one close-up, you see his eyelids, the skin around it, and again, it's just darkness, no light in the eyes. The light is gone from his eyes. The spirit is gone from his eyes. And it looks like you're looking at a horse, you're looking at like an animal. He's embracing it, right? This Oni he needs to be in these moments. Demonic, animalistic, death incarnate, as if you're looking into the abyss, right? The abyss gazes also into you, right? You see that close-up of his eye, right? It's an incredible moment, incredible shot as well, right? The close-up of the eye. If you show that to someone out of context, no chance to think that's a human eye, right? That's the idea here, right? That's the context here, or it's deliberate rather. Some of these shots of him looking demonic, even though he's the most depleted he could be at that point, it's really quite the poignant writing choice, isn't it? Right? That this being that should be giving up, and just just ridding himself of all of this pain, yet he's dialed in even more, right? And that petrified the king for the first time in his life. And this deliberate choice to have him resemble an Oni, right? From Japanese folklore. It's just one of those golden writing moments from this episode. Just one of many, right? Because, ultimately Onis are literally meant to be, ogres or demons from Japanese folklore, right? And you see even that tapestry folklore approach a little bit earlier on in one of the greatest shots I've seen in any anime. And I'm speaking of that incredible shot of, Meruem as he's just in awe of the chairman, right? And he's kind of thinking back to how Zeno and the chairman kind of came into his life recently, and the ups and downs of it, and just the incredible experience of it. That shot right there, you see the 100-hand golden Buddha behind Netero as he's center frame, but on the left side you've got Zeno and his dragon, right, from the dragon dive, right, the taxi service dragon as well, if you will. And then you've got just Meruem being caught up in all of it, right? I love the depiction of that as he's essentially upside down, right? Experiencing something really quite impressive, something new, something important. I mean, listen, that shot right there, I know, this anime is in 1080p, and even then it's pretty low bitrate, I'd say. So a screenshot in 1080p, a screen frame in 1080p is not going to look the greatest on a 4K display as a desktop background, but I'll do it anyways. But, if there is a recreation of that, right, maybe in a higher resolution, and I mean like an actual proper recreation of it, nothing, added to it, just as close to that as possible, please let me know. Please let me know, because I'd love to have that. I mean, essentially, it is the type of thing I could see myself hanging up, right, on the wall at my home. Like, it's special. That's art. Like I said, it's just one of those moments that takes your breath away. And you simply have to just sit back and appreciate the artistic excellence of it all, right? And that's just one of many, Listen, like, if you go through that episode, you could actually just come up with frame after frame of just incredible moments, right? And again, the stylistic change-up, the stylistic choices, or art style switch-ups in this episode are just incredible. And I really do think it's so effective because, this episode, the fight itself, right, it's kind of broken up into parts. different segments, and each segment almost has like its own art style, right? Or there's actually even a blend of it, right? But the art style in that is really quite specific, right? The tapestry-esque look of it, and then it gets broken up into 4 quadrants, right? And then it's like motion art as you see the light beaming onto the upside down Meruem. You see a close-up of Zeno and the dragon. But yeah, let's go back to that component of the chairman embodying an Oni, right? Again, an ogre or demon from Japanese folklore. Disease and disaster follows wherever they go. And then beyond that, you may have noticed that, I reacted in quite a specific manner, right, to that line of dialogue, right? And it's one of the most standout moments of this episode. If there's a hell, I'll see you there. And listen, it's a line of dialogue that all of us have heard time and time again. It's been used so many times. A lot of times it can come off a little bit cheesy, right? You think of like 80s or 90s action films and, just other action media, be it, gaming, be it anime, anything else, live action shows. It's the type of line that you just almost don't associate with something really quite, impactful and poignant. But here in this case, the chairman specifically saying that, it just has so much heft. Right? It means something. But also, that reaction of me kind of smiling was more so of just being floored by the writing once again. Because Onis are meant to be sent to one of the many Buddhist hells, right? That's the folklore. So I just think, as a whole, it's an incredible writing choice. It really is, to have him embody that, right? As he inches towards the most disgraceful act of his life. But also, the final act of his life. This is my life's final act, as he put it earlier. Right, but he had to completely embody that. He understood that. Okay, now this is it. The final chance, my final roll of the die, the zero hand did not do anything. Right, and even the chairman, even if he is realistic about the whole thing, even he's really quite surprised that zero hand wasn't enough. Right, so the fact that he actually got to try it is also this incredible moment. It's not something it's clearly not something he's tried all that much, if ever, right? The zero hand. But listen, the thing is, there's so much unknown about the past of the chairman, right? Netero. For me, as an audience member, at least, I don't know if the manga is going to do some kind of, prequel type aspect, flashback story arc, backstory story arc, because, the possibilities are endless, essentially. Given his age, he must have been through some incredible experiences and all that. And, I hope the manga has more, exploration of the late Netero, right? The last of his kind. But, I caught myself there. That's one of the things that's been on my mind. And I'll get into that, in terms of the legacy, the lasting name, right? Is this it? Is this the end of that name? Is this the end of that bloodline? That is one thing that's been on my mind since the end of that episode, right? I'll get to that in a bit. But, going back to that point about disease and disaster following them anywhere they go, the Oni, that is, now you kind of look into the immediate literal fallout, the aftermath of a nuclear strike, right? Even if it is like a mini strike, mini nuke, a cheap one at that. God damn, that just hurts. Anytime I think of that, it just hurts. It hurts me so much, to see someone like the chairman who's dedicated his entire life to martial arts, eternal gratitude and all of that, to have to, resort to that. My God, it's quite the turn, but it's executed to perfection as well, right? In the frame of an Oni, that mindset, embracing that in his final moments, accompanied by some of the most insane imagery you could possibly see, right? There's a one shot of him centered, right? You see his entire face, his eyebrows, those really distinct ears, those eyes that have no life in them, demonic. The detail in that, my God. Beautiful stuff, man. Incredible stuff. Unforgettable stuff. Haunting stuff. But so, as far as disease and disaster is concerned, let's look at the, possible residual radioactive material, right? Because listen, they made it really clear they're taking quite a realistic and grounded approach with the destructive force of a nuke, right? Again, to my surprise, because up until this point, I just kind of assumed, okay, these Nen practitioners, the ones that are in the higher or upper echelon of it, right, the best of the best, the iconic figures and all that, they surpass any man-made I don't know, any man-made weapon or anything, right, of that sort. So I just kind of assumed that this entire time, especially given some of the things I saw in the York New City arc, right? And since then, I've just kind of assumed, okay, yeah, these people, these beings, they're able to surpass anything that's actually manufactured. But no, that's not the case, right? And the thing is, it's like a mix of the fantastical, fictional elements and also, grounded elements as well, authentic and realistic elements as far as a nuke is concerned, right? So I'm going to go ahead and assume, the realistic aspect of it doesn't just end with the destructive force of it, right? Surely there's fallout, actual literal fallout, right? Residual radioactive material. And yes, of course, it's not quite the Fat Man, right? It is called the miniature rose after all, and it's cheap and all of that and really quite compact. But again, the depiction of its destructive force tells you that, of course, there is going to be, fallout, residual radioactive material and all of that. And also at this point, I know that, both Yuppie and Poof are also trying to get to this point, to this appointed location, right? And that appointed location makes even more sense now, given that, he detonates that miniature rose, right? Going underground, perhaps in an attempt to make sure it doesn't reach anyone else. But also, let's not forget that it can stretch up to, 10 to 20 miles, I believe, the residual radioactive material, that is. Again, depending on the explosion yield. So, there's that aspect of it. If they fly right into this, right, into ground zero. Now, listen, it's a massive hypothetical or what if, but, I think there's room for speculation there that, there is an opening there for the king to survive this somehow, right? Because they didn't show me a definitive death, right? They showed me things that could be definitive death. The crazy thing is, even before that, they showed me that depiction of the zero hand, perhaps one of the greatest strikes any Nen practitioner could execute. And they showed me that even that wasn't enough to really do much, right? So even then, right before the miniature rose goes off, even then it shows me, okay, Meruem can put up with anything essentially, right? It's really quite disheartening, isn't it, at that point, if you look at it from the chairman's perspective. And even from my perspective, even though I'm not actively rooting for Meruem to die or anything. So yes, there is a slim chance that Meruem could survive something like that, given everything I've seen leading up to that. But again, given his reaction, given that fear that he felt in those moments and understood, okay, this is the type of force that I simply have to, retreat from, it's going to do a number on him, a number and then some. Right, but if he's to survive it, right, as crazy as that seems, he's going to have another battle on his hands, right, in terms of the radiation exposure and all of that. And of course, that is going to end up applying to Poof and Yuppie as well if they do fly right into this, if they do get to ground zero. I mean, that's the whole idea, right? But the thing is, things change dramatically now. Imagining them flying into this, holy shit. Just even thinking about their potential reactions to this. I don't know, man. I don't know. I think there's enough room there to speculate that, okay, Meruem could somehow survive it. But again, I'm not expecting him to be in one piece or anything. If that's the case, after you present this destructive force in this capacity, then, it'll be like, okay, that's just kind of like bad writing at this point. But let's see, I think there's still some interesting stuff ahead. But yeah, ultimately, either way you look at it, humanity's worst was able to best nature's elite, right? The most destructive, the most powerful weapon, functions as a symbol of humanity's collective evolution. The capacity to be this ruthless, destructive force is unrivaled, right? In that sense, humanity is undefeated. And, Meruem had no idea. He couldn't even fathom this. Right? This is essentially the whole idea of him actually being a little bit naive as well, right? Speaking with such authority and arrogance about the nature of humans and the things that they're capable of. Listen, I'm not trying to take the side of humans here or anything, but I'm just saying, this is a part of the shortcoming, and the chairman knew this the entire time. Listen, I said something about something biting him in the ass. I'll checkmate you shortly. King Meruem said that, right? And I believe I said in the last episode's discussion, that sounds like something that might bite you in the ass. And then, just look at it. Look at the line of dialogue, the final moments before it goes off. I understand now. You had me in checkmate from the beginning. So the moment Meruem agrees to walk out of that throne room or from Komugi's room, right? Alongside Zeno at that point, who departs after dropping them off. Or sorry, he departed before dropping them off. His dragon drops them off. The moment the Chimera Ant King Meruem agrees to that competition, right? That was it. That was it. It was done right then and there, and the chairman knew it, right? Because he knew, if I cannot defeat him, through my own means, after testing myself to my limit, to my capacity, then, there's always going to be the unfortunate last resort, right? The disgraceful final act of his life, the miniature rose, the poor man's rose. And they do explain the reasoning for that, due to the shape of the smoke cloud. And even that image itself, it's that blooming rose, right? A rose cannot bloom on a battlefield, eh? But yeah, there's this contrast, right? The destructive force of the miniature rose, but then the beauty of it as well. There's quite a bit of that in this episode. You see the beautiful side of humanity, perhaps, human excellence through the efforts of the chairman as a martial artist, right? The dedication, the determination, the sacrifices, and all of that, right? And then, of course, there's the other side of humanity as well, depicted through the chairman in his final moments as well. But let's kind of look at the character arc for Meruem, right? If this is to be the conclusion, right? If he is actually dead, does it feel like a complete character arc? Does it feel like it's quite a compelling, ending to a character arc? I don't know. At this point in time, if I'm being honest, if he is to be dead, right? If that was his final moment, it does kind of feel at this point in time a little bit incomplete, because ultimately there's still a few things at play here, a lot of things at play here actually, for that character arc. I think, especially now that he got his name, even though he got his name right before the explosion and right before his potential death, right? Meruem, that's your name. Hell, I think I missed it at first, or I didn't even react to it at first because it didn't register. But the second time he said it, yes, that's your name, Meruem. Right? And my God, listen, folks, I have to make sure I say this right now before I forget it. The voice acting, the new voice actor for the chairman, round of applause, because that right there is an incredible performance, beginning to end, especially in those final moments. Oh my God, the cadence, hanging out for dear life in his final moments, perhaps, right? Depleted of all life, essentially. To have that come out of that husk of a human being at that point is just, oh my God, quite the contrast again, right? Barely just kind of there, barely alive, yet that is the tone of his delivery, of his demeanor at that point. That's how sure he is of humanity's destructive capabilities. And that's one of the things that immediately induces immense fear for the first time in our King Meruem. That's quite a performance, man. And at that point, as the empty husk of the chairman just kind of looks to the ground, all dejected, and as Meruem is going on and on about him being the hope of his kind, right? And then it took generation after generation, and all of that, the buildup, the trajectory, all of that to this final being, the pinnacle of it all, right? There's that moment of silence. Now, I'll get into that in a bit as well, as far as discussion points are concerned, that idea of, him being this, final being, the hopes of the entire species is essentially on his shoulders, right? He shoulders that responsibility in comparison to the individuality of humans, right? Not a collective. But again, he found out something else about humanity at that point. There's that moment right after that, there's a moment of silence, as I suppose King Meruem is kind of, hoping to hear something from the chairman. It lingers. And then he starts laughing. The moment he starts laughing, you saw the shift in my expression at that moment. I felt this, sudden tingling on the back of my neck, goosebumps, hair-raising moment, especially once that sound effect kicks in and you see, again, right, death incarnate. You see the skull, right? And every time that, that sound effect kicks in, it's like a jolt. It gives you this jolt. It's like, oh my God, hold on. Something's still left in the tank here. Something's about to happen here. And from that point on, again, as he really truly finally transforms into the Oni that he needs to be in that moment, it's the perfect scene. It is just exceptional. Perfect as it gets, leading up to, again, the detonation, and then, the twist, the flashback to the doctors that outfitted him. And, I suppose they might not be the exact same ones, because the main doctor there is not the one that was present operating on the Queen, the lady with the scar, right? But, if you kind of look back at it now, there's a bit of a hint there, right? These specialists that, they can pull off some insane things, and you see it on display here. He's been outfitted, right? And I believe you kind of actually even see the scar on the chairman's torso, right? I mean, the shot itself is incredible, one leg missing, one arm missing, and of course, I believe that is a callback to his fun little encounter with Gon and Killua, early stages of the anime. But it's him stabbing himself in the heart. But you can almost kind of even look at it as him kind of putting his hand above his heart in his final moments, right? Just a visual depiction of it. But as the camera pans up, you see like a big X. So I'm going to go ahead and assume that is a scar, right? So at some point, he had to go away for a bit to get outfitted, right? I'm guessing it's around that time he does get in contact with the doctors, I suppose, for the Queen, and then he off screen, I suppose he told them of another idea. And listen, folks, this is about to be one of the toughest decisions as well as far as a thumbnail is concerned, because again, there's some incredible moments in this one. But some of them, or a lot of them, are really full of spoilers, I suppose. I suppose I have a plethora of choices, of course. But yeah, it might change a few times even, by the time it hits YouTube. I don't know. But I think, it's the type of episode that deserves quite the thumbnail as well. It just demands it. And again, I know most people don't care about this, but, for the ones who do care about my presentation and how I present my content, right? I'll try my best to be mindful of spoilers, but every now and then you have to dabble a bit, right? Maybe not something super full of spoilers, but maybe something that could be a key moment from the episode, right? Listen, I know. I've been around on YouTube for a long time at this point, on and off, of course, but I know the nature of thumbnails and how people approach it. Some people do not give a shit. They'll straight up spoil it. They'll spoil anything, right? For the clicks, of course. But as many of you know, I've always tried my best to avoid the most spoiler shot. And sure, at times even I've, had to resist the urge to actually use something that might be spoilery. And listen, maybe I've done it a few times, over the span of the last 7-8 years. But for the most part, I think I've got a good track record. But, I'll have to go through the incredible album of frames from this episode and see the one that's most fitting, right? I mean, to me, it feels like it's got to be something related to the chairman, right? Like I said, it felt like a privilege to sit here to watch him in his final stand, his final moments, right? As an audience member. And yeah, I do want to make sure that the thumbnail itself, showcases the chairman in some capacity. Now, let me kind of go back to this idea of Meruem potentially surviving this. At the most basic level, if that is to happen, right, he simply has to come out the other end of this as a changed individual. It's as simple as that. Anything other than that is not acceptable, right? Unacceptable, essentially. And, if that is the angle that is going to be taken here, I have full faith in Togashi's writing that, it is going to be something quite different on the other end of it. Again, if he comes out the other end, right? And again, even so, if he comes out the other end, there's always the possibility of radiation and all of that, the exposure. At the end of the day, an experience such as this one simply dictates that you come out the other end a changed individual, right? That some things are going to change forever. Again, a big what if. But if it is the case, that's my expectation, right? I'm expecting a different Meruem if he can actually survive this. So now it's that point of, okay, is it actually about to be that whole situation of, okay, the one final attempt to finally take out the enemy, but You know, much like Cell from DBZ, he comes back, right, after Goku's sacrifice. So let's see if, you know, it is going to go down that route. But, you know, there the difference is that Cell comes back better than ever, stronger than ever, right? I don't know if that might be a possibility here, you know, given the traumatic experience he's just had, right? And that's all assuming if they do take that angle, right? Because as of this point, it appears that he's dead, right? But like I said, there's room for speculation, given, you know, Meruem's buildup, given his buildup, his exterior, and just his durability and just his capacity as this, you know, perfect being, the pinnacle of species and all that. So yeah, let's see. And also, as far as the appointed location and the risk is concerned, now, you know, I do have to ask the question: did people like Nov and Moral know about this at the least, right? Because they are higher ups, you know, they are people he respects. And just as far as seniority is concerned, you know, perhaps he did tell them something about this. But I don't know. I'm actually leaning towards him not saying anything to anyone, really, right? And, you know, that right there is also a risk, a massive risk that he took, right? Just having that, you know, being a part of him, being outfitted with a miniature Rose. Now, you know, it's the chairman, it's Netero. He's not just randomly going to, you know, die of a heart attack like an old man or something, you know. So I'm not saying that's a risk, but there is some risk, massive risk, you know, say around the first time they do face the Chimera Ant King. Once they do come face to face with the Ant King, right? He gets a jump on him and Zeno at one point, right? They're simply at his mercy. Imagine in a what-if situation, Meruem actually does decide to behead both of them rather. There you go. Explosion, everyone dies. Everyone dies. The entire extermination squad and all of that. Maybe, you know, maybe one or two might survive given how far they might be in terms of maybe how far down, you know, basement and all of that. But yeah, it's a massive risk, that as well. But, you know, then I've mentioned this idea a few times now, you know, Nov Sensei saying that it'll be too late by the time the two royal guards get there. So does that kind of play into the notion of them or him potentially knowing? And, you know, like I said on a few occasions at this point, yeah, it's a disgraceful act, right? And that's one of the reasons it hurts so much to see someone like the chairman having to resort to that, right? It's heartbreaking at one point that, you know, everything he tried isn't enough. Even though he knew that that might be the case, you know, even Zero Hand not being enough really crushed him, because he knew at that point, okay, yeah, this is the end of that. So I know what has to be done now. So, you know, ultimately beyond the details of it, you know, the heroic final stand of it that only Meruem really got to experience, his final moments, his legacy essentially at this point in time is going to be associated with the use of this miniature Rose, the poor man's Rose, to take care of this, right? That he had to resort to that, right? At least that's going to be the most, the most fresh incident in the minds of these people, the types that don't really care much for the chairman, right? Like I said, copiously mythologized agenda, aspect, or angle could be pushed by this vice chairman and all of that. But as far as legacy is concerned, you know, one of the things I've been thinking about since the ending of this episode is his name, right? Does he have any family out there? Biological family? Is there someone out there that can carry that name? Now I've only known one name, Netero, right? But yeah, you know, you have to think about these things. Is that it? He's the last of his kind, the end of his bloodline? Or, you know, there are relatives out there, right? Imagine being related to Netero. Wow. But yeah, you have to think about that. You know, is there any family out there? You know, be it siblings, be it children, anything, right? But like I said earlier, you know, any kind of follow-up on this, I'm not really expecting it. Not in the anime, at least. Perhaps it does kind of cover some of that in the manga at some point. But, you know, if it is the case, if there is someone out there that is a biological relative of the late chairman, yeah, that's really quite interesting. That's a fascinating thing to even think about, the possibility of it, and, you know, any potential role they could play in the near future or, you know, down the line in this story. And also, before I forget, you know, that idea of him cutting off his top knot back in episode 92, I believe, you know, a lot of things happened in episode 92. Yeah, I mean, listen, I know some people believe that that's just because, they failed to take care of the Chimera and Queen. But, at the time I speculated that, okay, is he preemptively kind of, just cutting off his top knot because he believes he's about to do something that, dictates that he cut off his top knot, right? Something dishonorable on the horizon, perhaps. Could it be this? This idea that, I'm even open to the idea of using this miniature rose, right? Maybe there's some connection there. But yeah, the one thing I do know is that the saboteur, the vice chairman, yeah, he's gonna have a field day in the aftermath of this, for sure. And this is something I hope to see. At least the character itself. Be it in these final few episodes, leading up to episode 148, or even in the manga, right? I'm open to either. Because I am open to exploring the manga as well. I know I keep jumping back and forth here because there's just so much. You'll have to allow this this approach for this one at least. But it's just a spectacle to be observed, right? A clash of ideologies, a clash of titans, clash of specimens. But of course, before that happened, I got this showcase, this incredible showcase, right? An episode full of just these two. Incredible stuff, man. Just incredible stuff. I'm still floored by some of the imagery that's present. Right. And again, the fidelity of it, the quality of it, the care, the labor of love and all of that. Right. Everything that's gone into this episode, it really truly deserves to be celebrated. And I'm sure it has been celebrated for years. Right. Again, as a showcase, a showpiece for the anime industry. Right. It really is as good as it gets, isn't it? And, it's clearly worthy of being the final episode of The Chairman Netero. Right. A showcase. And I said it, a few times, but it is a privilege. It feels like a privilege, and that's how it should feel, right? In like a goodbye episode for a character of that ilk, of that magnitude. And, thinking about the miniature rose, the name itself and the reasoning for that, again, the cloud it creates, the cloud of smoke that it creates and all of that, rose or, rose petals falling apart, that's something I've seen already episodes ago at this point, right? It's always been something that kind of stood out. But didn't quite really make all that much sense at the time. It's around the time Knuckle is, going in on Montezuyupi, right? Montezuyupi fakes him out, of course. And then, of course, Killua comes to his rescue, to Knuckles' rescue. But at that point, there's this cut of the rose petals falling apart, right? It kind of makes sense now. And, given how common this miniature rose, poor man's rose is, mass-produced and all of that, you go back to someone like Genthuru, right? Did his, Bomberman ability actually take inspiration from this, right? There is a possibility of that, I think. But yeah, the human potential for evolution doesn't come down to, the passing of the best genes to a single individual, right? As Meruem put, even though, that's a bit flawed, isn't it? That line of thinking, given the fact that human buildup, human DNA did get introduced into the Chimera ants, and it is a part of Meruem, right? That individuality and all of that. It's all there, right? He stands there, he lectures the chairman, yet, I suppose that's the point of it all. Yeah, there's human buildup. That is a part of him. That's undeniable, right? Hell, right before a lot of this took off, he's in the middle of a full-on identity crisis. He himself, needs that identity. He wants to know his name. He wants to know his purpose, all of that, right? So for him to sit here or stand here and lecture the chairman and, almost romanticize, he is romanticizing it, right? He is quite the romantic in that sense. This idea of him bearing all responsibility, being the peak of his kind, right? Shouldering all of their responsibilities and hopes and dreams and, wishes and all of that. The peak, but that's the limit. But yeah, going back to my initial point about human evolution, or the potential for human evolution not coming down to the passing of the best genes to a single individual, but through discovery, right? Through advancement over centuries, technology, knowledge, scientific reasoning. Knowledge is power, right? It truly is. And the ultimate force of destruction still reigns supreme. And by quite a bit, even though it is a cheaply produced one. Right? It's quite a sobering thought, isn't it? That, in the world of these fantastical characters that are giants, essentially, right? Again, gods that walk the earth and all of that, a mini nuke is still more than enough for that, right? How about that for commentary, right? You cannot forget that this is, you cannot overlook that this is a Japanese storyteller, introducing this idea of nuclear bombs. And going back to the first half of the episode, Meruem's attempts to break through the chairman's defense, I suppose. Listen, ultimately, he's got this incredible durability. So he uses that durability. He uses his body as this canvas to obtain the sample size, right? And ultimately, he does have those breakthrough moments. And I love how much his encounters with Komugi actually play a part here, right? A significant part at that. It's a part of him now, forever. And in those moments, as Meruem is trying to have that breakthrough, I thought, the kinetic energy, the dynamism that they're able to showcase, again, through the direction, it's just simply exceptional, right? It really got that big episode treatment. I mean, that's just a given, right? Everything here is exceptional, top to bottom, right? The detailed drawings, like I said a little bit earlier, the art style switch-ups, love that. I really did. The direction, as I just mentioned right now, and the flow of the episode itself, right? And that has a lot to do with the exceptional editing. And of course, like I mentioned a little bit earlier, immaculate screenplay, right? The dialogue, is just incredible. Some of the one-liners are just all-timers in this. I mean, if you think about it, it's actually really quite crazy, isn't it? Really quite incredible. Even, the role Komugi plays in this, that he's actively applying a lot of the things that he learned there, right? Things like, learning the art of anticipating enemy actions and all that, right? He's applying these strategies in the field against perhaps the greatest possible opponent. So that's like the highest compliment you could possibly give to Komugi. And listen, as formidable as the king is, it's still his first proper challenge. And it's quite an incredible challenge at that in the chairman. So, it's not as if, for the most part, it does appear to be a cakewalk, right? Him just kind of taking everything that's thrown at him. It's still, using these techniques in his first major, incredible encounter. So it's him actually having to expend a lot of his energy. And you see that at one point, he's actually really quite excited about the prospect of it as well, having this sparring partner that can actually hang in there. There's this really great line of dialogue. Old timer or old soldier, please hang in there. Something along those lines, right? Be that perfect partner that I need, the sparring partner that I need to execute this, right? And simply put, by the end of it, he does have a lot of respect for someone like the chairman, right? And speaking of someone that incredible dialogue, that memorable dialogue, how about, the chairman losing his arm, and then, he just straight up tells him, right? You believe I cannot pray with a single arm. A prayer comes from the heart, right? And that's always the case, right? Always. Even if there's always been a performative, physical component linked to it, praying, that is, bringing two hands together. And, the chairman goes on to say that if the heart achieves the correct form, right, it becomes emotion, and emotion may be manifested. But going back to this idea of, him romanticizing it all, Meruem, that is, proudly romanticizing about the, the shouldering of the collective wisdom and the wishes of all Chimera ants, right? The entire trajectory of its evolution poured into this one individual, right? Concentrated. It's an interesting concept, isn't it? Because ultimately it's collectivism concentrated into one individual. And as he is, lecturing the chairman, you see Meruem's perspective is quite a matter-of-fact mindset. It's not just an opinion he holds, right? He firmly believes, right, that this is a universal truth, that everything is going to fall before his might, because that's just how it's meant to be. That's just how things are, right? Again, there's him being a little bit naive there, right? It's beginning to sound a little bit preachy, him kind of, drinking his own Kool-Aid, if you will. But Netero, on the other hand, as accomplished and as impressive as he was, always knew that there is someone better out there, right? Someone stronger than him, perhaps. That's my reading of it, that he's never actually, presented himself as someone who is meant to be the pinnacle. Me as an audience member, sure, I can speculate about that. I can, even give him that badge, I suppose. But, at no point is he actually actively taken that upon himself. Hell, it's quite the opposite. any chance he gets, he's always kind of downplaying it, right? It's others, others such as Nav and Moral, who kind of stand up and say, okay, he's being modest and all of that. But yeah, King Medwem learned that for better or for worse, humanity can accomplish anything, right? I mean, you think of the heritage of it all, right? The dedication, the determination, the mastery of the martial arts on display, the power levels. None of that meant anything in front of this cheaply produced nuke, right? It's just, yeah. And listen, even the sequence itself, I touched up on it a few times, but you see that the sound just cuts off completely once it detonates, right? It's not presented as some epic moment, right? It's raw, it's grounded, it's authentic in its depiction and presentation. And essentially on this day, the chairman's heart and his gratitude simply wasn't enough, right? It's the day his heart died. And the crazy thing is, this miniature rose, this cheaply produced mini nuke, it was developed long before this Chimera Ant threat and the Chimera Ant King, right? Long before that. Long before Chimera Ants showed up as this potential global threat. And ultimately, that's a bit of a reality check as well. It was never going to be a global threat, right? I mean, humans are out here using this stuff on each other, right? So yeah, he really truly did not understand humanity. He underestimated the potential for cruelty, right? For destructive force. He simply did not understand that humans have perfected their cruelty, right? Slowly and over time. It's just not comparable, right? The things that humans have done to each other. This is nothing. This ended up being nothing. A non-issue almost, right? It was just all about trying to handle it in this manner, right? Let's not make a big deal about it, right? The Hunter Association is going to take the blame, and even back then, you go episodes ago, at one point, he's on the phone, on the horn, essentially, with some of those higher ups, and I think the chairman said something like, "Oh, any means necessary, is that acceptable?" Right? Now I know. This is one of the things that was being discussed clearly. And I do believe that in his final moments as a warrior, the chairman Netero actually did the honorable thing. And he admitted defeat, right? And gave up the name. But he certainly was human in his final moments, right? As he begins to, again, resemble the demon that's required in this moment, the Oni, right? He taunted him a bit and reminded him of, what they are capable of. And just how short-sighted Medwem has been. The thing is, even giving up the name, it's just so interesting as well in this context, because even though Medwem is going on and on about, the ego and the individuality of humans, he still legitimately wanted to know the name that was given to him. And the chairman knew this, he understood this. But yeah, I think that brings me to the conclusion of this. All of a sudden, I'm really kind of beginning to feel quite hungry. It's quite a long session, but yeah, one more time, I've got to say the writing here is just sublime, it's poetic, it's creative, and simply put, it's fucking phenomenal, man. It's just incredible stuff by Togashi. And ultimately, I think it's just so clear at this point that the Chimera Ant King, Medwem, just didn't quite understand the human desire, or humanity's desire to be on top at all times, right? And at all costs, rather. Right? The capacity to be monstrous and to be cruel beyond comprehension. It's there, right? It's always been there. It's always going to be there. And, in that aspect, human nature is undefeated. Undefeated. Yeah. Incredible stuff, folks. Incredible. I think I've said everything I need to say, at least at this point. But it is the type of episode that you could probably draw so much from. But yeah, for now, if you enjoyed that, consider dropping a like, consider dropping some comments, give me your thoughts. If you are interested in early access or timer-based full length, consider checking out the Patreon page, and also in the process, potentially supporting the channel. The links are in the description and the pinned comment. Also links to social media, if that's your thing. Right then, thank you so much for joining me, folks, and thank you for your time, because time is precious. It really is, and I do hope to see you again soon for the next one. Until then, take it easy.